Hello and welcome to a special BriefingsDirect podcast series coming to you from the 2015 Ariba Live Conference in Las Vegas. We're here the week of April 6th to explore the future of business commerce. We'll learn how innovative companies are tapping into business networks to harness the power of communities to discover, connect, and collaborate with peers and partners across the street or around the world. Not only are these leaders better managing their spend and buyer-seller interactions, they are also gleaning insights and intelligence to learn from the past, capitalize on the present, and chart an effective course for the future, all in real time from a single platform. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Interarbor Solutions, your host throughout this series of Ariba-sponsored BriefingsDirect discussions. Our next thought leadership panel discussion focuses on what winning sales organizations do to separate themselves from the competition and create market advantage. We'll hear from Rain Group about a recent study on sales that uncovers what sales leaders do differently to foster loyalty and gain repeat business. And we'll also hear from National Business Furniture on how they are leveraging business networks to enable more collaborative and innovative processes that enhance their relationships, improve customer satisfaction, and boost sales. So with that, please join me now in welcoming our guests. We're here with Mike Schultz, president of Rain Group, based in Framingham, Massachusetts. Welcome, Mike.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dana. It's good to be here.
We're also here with Brady Sieberlich. He's IT, e-procurement, and development manager at National Business Furniture, based in Milwaukee. Welcome, Brady.
Thanks, Dana. This should be fun.
Well, yeah, let's start. Tell me a little bit, Mike, about competitive pressures. What is happening in companies now? What's changing the sales dynamic? Why should we be aware of that, and what can we do about it?
Well, sure. So it's really interesting in the world of sales that if you fell asleep in 1982 having just read a sales book and woke up 30-something years later and in 2005 went back to work, you didn't miss anything. Didn't really change that much. But there are a couple of things that have been happening in the last, 10 years or so that have been making sales a lot different. It's changed more in the last 10 years than it did in the previous 40. So let's look at two of the things. The first one is that buyers perceive the offerings that different companies bring forth to them to be somewhat similar, somewhat interchangeable. What that means is that the sellers are no longer competing on saying, hey, here's the product, here's the service, and here's the benefit it's going to get you, because the other guy has something that the buyer perceives to be kind of the same. So what they're actually competing on now is how to use and how to apply those services and products so the company actually gets the greatest benefit of them. So that's not actually the power of the offering. That is the power of the ideas and the innovation and the collaboration that the sellers are bringing to the table. So there's one. The other thing is the asymmetry of information has been changing. It used to be very asymmetrical because the buyer had all the need and all the desire, but the seller had all the knowledge. Now they can hop online and talk to user groups who have bought from you and see what everyone says about your pricing and find your competitors really quickly. They can get a lot more information. So it's been leveling the playing field, which brings us back to point number one. If the sellers want to compete, they have to be smarter than the average bear than they used to, because they used to be able to just take orders, and they can't do that anymore and win.
Brady, does that strike you as similar to what you're facing? What do you do about this new dynamic, different in the last 10 years than the previous 40?
I definitely agree with Mike there. I know in the last couple years with the buyers, I think the buyers are getting smarter. They're trying to challenge us more with the internet, the easily ability to price compare, to shop products, to look at product reviews. They're so much more knowledgeable now. And another thing that we found with our buyers is they want the ordering process to be as easy as possible, whether it's through the internet, through an e-procurement system, and you really have to work a lot harder to make sure the buyer finds you as the easiest way to order. So we've really had to work hard at that, and we've had to be able to adjust because every buyer has needs, and they all have different needs, and we want to make sure we can try and cover as many different needs without doing a whole customization for everybody.
It sounds as if the experience of buying and procuring is as important as the what you're buying. Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, that's actually what we found from our research. You mentioned the research project. I mentioned that sales has changed in the last 10 years more than changed in the last 40, and that's created my industry being very sleepy. Most people kind of do the same thing in terms of what they profess to be what's important, to a whole bunch of people saying a whole bunch of different things, all the way up to the Harvard Business Review saying that solution sales is at its end. They published an article, The End of Solution Sales. They published an article, Selling is Not About Relationships. So is this true? What's actually going on? So we did this study where we studied 700 business-to-business purchases from buyers that represented $3.1 billion of purchasing power. And what we wanted to find out was, what was the buyer's experience like from the seller they awarded the business to the seller that came in almost there, but came in second place. And when you sell and you come in second place, the winner gets the trip to Aruba and the second place person gets the trip back to their office. So what we found is that the sellers that win, first of all, they don't just sell differently. They sell radically differently than the sellers that even come in the closest second place. But since the product and service playing field was perceived to be the buyer as similar, especially by the time they get to the last two. Yeah, sure, maybe they kicked out some lesser providers early. When they get down to the end, they can both provide the technology. They can both engineer the playing field that we're building. They can both do the thing that we need them to do. And it actually came down to the buyer experience with the seller and how the seller treated the buyer and what they did with the buyer were the tipping points for why they got awarded the business.
Brady, what has changed in terms of you're creating a better experience, a simple, direct, maybe even informative process for your customers? How do you accommodate what we've been talking about in terms of an improved experience?
Well, we try to be as flexible as possible, and we try to provide them with as much information as possible. Information is huge for us. Back in the days when we first started, we mailed catalogs, and for each piece of our furniture that we sell, you probably saw in the catalog 7 pieces of information: how big it was, how much it weighed, what colors it came in. Right now, on every piece of furniture we have, we hold over 100 pieces of information on it, and we display a lot of that on the web. It's an ergonomic chair, it's leather, it raises up and down, it comes with or without arms, just things like that. So we try to provide as much information because the shopper works harder. And unlike the days of a catalog where you had a catalog at your desk and you open it up, there's no competition there. On the web, there's plenty of competition, and everybody's trying to compete for that same dollar. So we want to make the customer as informed as possible. The customer doesn't want to necessarily have to call us and say, is this brown? How dark is this brown? We want to give them as much information as possible and inform them because they want to make the decision themselves and be done with it. So we're trying to get better at that.
I believe you're in your 40th year now at National Business Furniture. Tell us a little bit about your company, your scale, where you do business, and what it is precisely that you're selling.
That is correct. This year we are celebrating our 40th anniversary, which is pretty exciting for us. We sell in the U.S. and in Canada. We opened an office in Canada a couple years ago. The main reason we only sell in the U.S. market is because of what we sell. We sell office furniture, desks, chairs, bookcases. That stuff is too heavy to ship overseas, and you can't compete with some of the vendors that are over there already selling. So we sell here in the U.S. mostly. The majority of our business obviously comes from there. We obviously started as 100% catalog. In the early 90s, we made a website that was just for browsing purposes. You could not shop off of it. In the late 1990s, we added the ability to buy off of it. And right now, we're up to about a 50-50 split in what goes through the catalog and what comes through via e-commerce. In e-commerce, we include the internet, e-procurement system, stuff like that. So we've proven that we're still adjusting with it, but the weird thing is some of our product lines haven't changed that much. Traditional furniture is still traditional furniture, so we're selling some very similar products just 40 years later. So,
okay, given this change in the environment with the emphasis on experience and data, making good choices with a lot of different possible choices if you're a buyer. What are you doing differently in order to keep your business healthy? Is this a matter of having more strategic, long-term, predictable sales? Do you go about marketing in a different way? Have you changed the actual selling process in some fashion? How are you adjusting?
Probably all of the above, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess. You know, we're always looking for new markets to sell. We've just started to move into medical furniture lately, so we're doing some new things there. We're always looking for, with the government, they have different rules and buying, so we're trying to make sure we can adhere to those and make sure that's an open market for us. And we continue to just try and find better ways to do things, and that's what separates us from our competitors. Everybody who sells office furniture, we're all selling similar products around the same price. So we have to do something to differentiate ourselves. And we do that. We try to make the process easy. We try to provide the customer with as much information as possible. And we just want to make it a smooth process. The days of establishing a relationship and just hoping that'll carry you for years, like Mike said, are kind of come and gone. So we got to work harder to keep our existing customers. And we're doing that also, trying to find ways to find new customers too.
Well, we're here at Ariba Live. We're hearing a lot about business networks, end-to-end processes, using different partners and different suppliers to create a solution within that end-to-end process. What is it about business networks that helps you attain your goals of a smoother, data-driven process for sales?
I think when you can prove that you can collaborate over these networks, you have a success that you can show to other buyers, and you can say, hey, we've proven we can do this, and it shows that you've established yourself in these different markets. As I'm sure everybody knows, nobody wants to be the guinea pig and try something new with somebody else, but we've proven that we can work on these different markets and the different networks and continue to try and find ways to make it easier, and that's what we're really pushing.
Sure.
Add one quick thing on that. So network is one of those interesting words that you can unpack. So you can unpack it in the technology sense that things are networked. But there's also the concept of a network, that on the other side of this technology there are people. So as a seller, what it does when what you do here isn't just what you do here, but it starts to go out through technology to other people, is it amplifies whatever you do. So meaning if you're doing a pretty bad job, people are going to hear that it's a pretty bad job a lot faster than they used to. But if you're doing something interesting, if you're doing something worthwhile, if you're doing something that Brady's talking about saying, wow, this process really used to be a pain, and now it's a lot better, because of the technology that will get through to more people. So if you're doing the things that I talked about earlier, if you're selling in ways that help buyers get the most use out of what they're selling, get the most benefit out of what they're selling, and it's no longer just 3 words in a catalog saying this is how you're going to benefit, but in some ways you're going to benefit from working with us to get it, not just from the thing itself. The technology amplifies the good sellers, and they end up selling a lot more because it spreads faster.
I suppose another part of the technology impact is convenience. When you're already in an environment, an application, a cloud, a network, maybe even a mobile interface, and the seller is in that same environment, if you're a buyer, that has some positive implications. Things can be integrated. Things can be repeatable. The data can be collected, shared, and analyzed. Tell me a little bit, if you would, Brady, about being in a shared environment technically that also provides grease to this sales gear.
Oh, definitely it does. You know, we have some customers that we transact with here on Ariba, and the first 1, 2, 3 transactions, we had to work through some difficulties, but by transaction 10, 15, 20, it's just smooth and it goes right through. And that's what we're trying to push with other customers that buy from us, and we're trying to get them moved over to the network. We have a proven track record here. We're the highest furniture rated provider here. We're gold from the Ariba standpoint. So we're trying to push customers to continue to buy from us off of these networks, because we've proven how simple it can be. And we want to continue to do that and make I keep circling back to make the ordering process as simple as possible.
So, Mike, maybe looking a bit forward, if all things become equal in terms of the product and the information that's available, if we take that to its fullest extent, it really becomes a transactional efficiency, even down to, compressing the payment schedule and negotiating vis-a-vis actual transactions on a larger and larger scale. Where do we end up? Does sales go away altogether and it simply becomes a transaction, an algorithm?
Yeah, so there were predictions about 10 years ago when e-commerce and when the information symmetry really started to happen, when it shifted towards buyers and they started to know more, that there are going to be fewer salespeople in, let's think about it as in the U.S. because there's government data of the U.S. economy. So the U.S. government data said that there was about 1.9, or 1 out of 9 people working in the United States were in sales. That was in 2000. If you fast forward to now, the massive change has been that there are about 1 in 9 people are working in sales. So it hasn't changed. It's just that they're not order takers anymore. The other thing is that while things look the same, they still aren't always necessarily the same. So, for example, if you think about it, it all just becomes price pressure. If this goes directly to microeconomics and we're just buying pork bellies and it has to be the exact same price because the elasticity works that way and any shift is going to make it go to a different provider, that's really not the case because we're not all buying pork bellies. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think that Brady's looking really well. Maybe he needs some heart surgery. I have a really cheap one. Would you like to go see him? He's board certified, but he's a really cheap heart surgeon. It's like, oh, geez, there's a lot of decision process and a lot of mental things built up about what cheap versus expensive means, especially because if you're not talking about pork bellies, it is not necessarily the same. So the new challenge for buyers is to figure out what actually are the differences, because this law firm says they have the same capability as that law firm, but in fact, one law firm is actually better. And the question is how. And so it's contingent upon buyers and sellers to actually figure that out together. And that's why for law firms, consulting firms, accounting firms, just thinking about services, which are, I can't sink my teeth into them and bite them and tell you which one's thicker or stronger, is going to have a 20-year guarantee versus a 10-year guarantee on the chair. I'm just trying to figure out who's actually better, who can serve me better, who's the right fit. So it's not all commodities. And I think that one other challenge, if you think about it from the buying side, I think that it's not a big secret that heading into the purchasing department is not necessarily the absolute positive, I'm dying to do a career path at the top MBAs that are coming out of the top schools. And there are some great people in purchasing, but a lot of the times when we're talking with sellers that are doing $5 and $10 million very complicated things with buyers, and the purchasing person they're working with does not actually understand the business context of what they're trying to get done. And so they're like, how do I actually get to interact with them when the rules are they don't let me talk to them, and this is $7 million. They're buying this like they're buying roofing shingles. So I think it's going to require as much more sophistication from the buyers to figure out what they really need and what are really the quality levels as it is on the sellers to make sure that they bring forth the right ideas, craft the right solutions, and treat the buyers well.
So clearly we've hit on that reputation, being in an open, visible network where information can be traded, and that gets to that reputation and trust and a track record. But it also sounds like we're talking about some sort of value add to the buy. If other things are equal, but the experience of buying, if making a decision in a complex environment is the case, there's something else needed, consulting perhaps. So data perhaps, analysis. So Brady, what is potentially a value add in your business to increase your likelihood of making the sale and then keeping that relationship with the buyer?
We have a couple things, but one of our most important things is, like I said, we've been around for 40 years. And if you call either inside sales or our customer service, you're going to get somebody on average with over 10 plus years of furniture experience with us. And that's a big thing. They understand our products. Our vendors come into our office weekly and explain our products. They know the products. they can really help you find a solution that fits you. And that's one of our biggest selling point, I think, is our people. And that's an important thing for us. So they have the knowledge that they need, and they're not just order takers. They're much more. We call them, everybody on our side who answers the phone, they're furniture experts, and that's what they do.
Do you find that those salespeople with that track record, with that depth of knowledge, are taking advantage of things like the Ariba network to get more data, more analysis to help them? Have they made that leap yet to being data-driven rather than just experience-driven?
They're working on it. I mean, we're getting better, and we're constantly improving. And I agree with Mike's point. One of the hardest things is making sure that we align ourselves with our buyers' needs and determining what's important, figuring out what's important to them, and then making sure we're addressing those situations. And that's a challenge. And when you figure it out today, it changes tomorrow. So that makes it even more challenging.
Last word to you, Mike. What advice are you offering people as they think about creating a more attuned sales force, sales function in this new environment?
Sure. First, I'd like to say to Brady, thanks so much for agreeing with me with all the time. I really appreciate it, and congratulations on 40 years. We're celebrating our 13th year at Rain Group, and you're all invited to the bar mitzvah, so come on down to Framingham. We'd love to see you. So what advice do we have to sellers in this economy? Yes, the product and service is important, but what they're buying is you, and you just mentioned value add. When we surveyed those 700 buyers, we talked to 300 of them after, and we wanted to get their sense of the experience. And the kinds of things that they told us was that I was working to buy this particular thing, and this is going to be important. This isn't just putting paper clips in a drawer. This is about our ability to innovate, because I'm actually buying innovation training from a leadership consulting firm. Or this is about our ability to expand internationally, so we are going to be buying some kind of software. So I looked at these two software companies that we're down to, and I had a 2-hour discussion with the seller. But when I told them that I was really worried about the pitfalls of trying to do this and what I didn't know, he went out and he surveyed 15 of his own clients and gathered me a little research report of one to give me insight. He created his own little focus group to gather information for me so I could think about what challenges might await me. The other guy didn't do that. So the software, you know what? This guy's software is actually more. But if I have this guy around, if the company treats me, the delivery teams treat me, and he continues to treat me like he's treating me right now, they're actually going to be more supportive of my success in this important initiative. So be better. Be stronger. Don't just take orders, and think for the important buyers. How can I have them see that working with us, the whole package, it's not just the product and service are superior, because they might be close, but the whole thing that we bring to the table is superior value. And I know that sounds like a consulting word, but it's literally, I talked to this guy and he said, he brought me all of these ideas, and he talked to his actual other clients, and I said, can I talk to him? And he said, yeah, let me check with a few. That was worth a lot. So I could sign the PO for him, even though it was a little bit more, because it was important to me to go to bat for him. Live that kind of value add yourself as a person, and you can win and win consistently.
Well, great. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been learning about winning sales organizations and what they're doing to separate themselves from the competition and create market advantage. And so a big thanks to our guests. We've been with Mike Schultz, president of Rain Group, based in Framingham, Massachusetts. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Dana.
And we're also here with Brady Sieberlich, IT, e-procurement, and development manager at National Business Furniture based in Milwaukee. Thank you, Brady.
Thank you, Dana.
And thanks to our audience for joining us for this special podcast coming to you from the 2015 Ariba Live Conference in Las Vegas. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host throughout this series of Ariba-sponsored BriefingsDirect discussions. Thanks again for listening, and come back next time.